watching India Ascends with me, Gaurie, Dwivedi. This is a show that gets you the news and the views from the world of global politics, global economics. Let's take a look at what's making news this Friday evening. First up, Donald Trump accepts Republican nomination in the longest convention speech. In his 93-minute-long speech, Trump outlined immigration, energy, manufacturing as areas where he would begin work from day one, even as questions remain whether Joe Biden is still in the race to the Oval Office. Immigration was the overarching theme of former President Donald Trump's speech at the Republican convention. He termed illegal immigrants as illegal aliens, even as he tried to create a distinction between those and legal immigrants.
Levels that we've never seen before. It is an invasion indeed, and this administration does absolutely nothing to stop them.
China concludes its once in 5 years meeting. The plenum rubber stamps Xi Jinping's plans of moving away from property sector. The plenum commits to advancing work related to Taiwan and ousts former Foreign Minister Qin Gang from a top party body. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present her 7th budget, the very first in the third term of Prime Minister Modi. What should be the roadmap to get India on the superpower highway? India Ascends decodes. Bangladesh on the boil as students continue to protest Sheikh Hasina's decision of imposing quota system for government jobs. 39 people are dead, even as Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has refused to meet protester demands. Global Microsoft outage has created chaos world over, from flights to supermarkets to banking operations. The outage has disrupted multiple sectors and threatens to lead to massive issues. India's IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav says India is in touch with Microsoft and associates. Microsoft says underlying cause fixed, but impact still remains. The big story on India Ascends. Donald Trump is officially the Republican Party candidate for US elections, even as confusion continues about President Biden's candidature. There's growing clamor within the Democrat camp that Biden should make way for a more quote-unquote winnable candidate. But now Donald Trump is an interesting personality. The former president speaks his mind out, some would say even without a filter. And in his 93-minute-long speech, Trump has given a roadmap of what his presidency would look like. And I decode right here what Trump 2.0 would mean for India. First is the immigration. Trump 2.0 presidency will bring in sweeping changes to the present immigration system in America. Trump's rhetoric blurs the distinction between legal and illegal immigrants. But as president, I believe this distinction will be very important, and it's more so for India. In FY 2022, India was the second largest country of origin for green card holders, just behind Mexico. There you can see on your screens. Of the little under 10 lakh people receiving a green card that year, a little over just about 66,000 were from India. And as of now, there are 1.2 million Indians that are waiting in queue to get their green cards, which are complicated due to country-specific restrictions and the low annual quotas that have been put in place. And this figure is set to rise to 2.1 million people by 2030 as per present norms. And if they get any worse, then this number would balloon even more. And I believe under the Trump presidency, the 7% per country quota could probably be revisited, and that could mean longer wait lines for Indians as far as green cards are concerned. Illegal immigrants, the part which causes so much of political rhetoric, the part on which elections are actually won and lost in countries like America, that you can see is also an area where Indians do have a fairly large chunk. And that could face a lot of political slugfest and I believe severe action under a President Trump's presidency. Add to it the travel ban that aims to discriminate between who can and who cannot enter in America. Now, let me point that out that India does not happen to be in these countries that will be covered under the ban, but it talks about the approach towards immigration in whole as far as Trump 2.0 is concerned. Listen in to what he said in that 93-minute-long speech where all one heard was immigration, frankly.
At the heart of the Republican platform is our pledge to end this border nightmare and fully restore the sacred and sovereign borders of the United States of America, and we're going to do that on day one. The greatest invasion in history is taking place right here in our country. They are coming in from every corner of the earth, not just from South America, but from Africa, Asia, the Middle East. They're coming from everywhere. They're coming at levels that we've never seen before. It is an invasion indeed, and this administration does absolutely nothing to stop them. And you're seeing it happen all the time. That's why, to keep our families safe, the Republican platform promises to launch the largest deportation operation in the history of our country.
So the second impact for India will be on trade. Trump 2.0 will see him coming very hard on his protectionist plank that he spoke about. India's long pending free trade pact, I believe, could probably take longer to come through if Trump were in the Oval Office. He would insist that India should ensure a complete pass-through of all US manufactured goods and dismantle the tariff structure that we put in place. Now, that is a problem for India because India's domestic industry is not as advanced or as big as some of the developed countries, which means that the mechanism that we have to safeguard some of our interests of the Indian industry cannot be completely overcome and dismantled in one single day, something I believe Trump would make a case for. Now, the bilateral goods and services trade that India and US have is about $118 billion. India runs a trade surplus, which is about $36 billion. But you look at it from Trump's point of view, it means that there's a trade deficit of $36 billion. He would want to cover this up, and he would probably put in place category-specific tariffs. So I believe a lot of protection is in way for Indian industry if Trump 2.0 happens. The third thing is China. That's an area where Trump and his views match what is India's, particularly regarding security and strategic threat that Beijing poses to India, to Asia, and to the world. In fact, it was Trump who recognized the role and importance that India plays in countering China in Asia. And he was the one who renamed the US Pacific Command to Indo-Pacific Command. So there you can see that there is a meeting of minds between India and US under Trump 2.0. That's likelihood as far as dealing with China is concerned. Trump would also impose big tariffs on the Chinese goods that will be coming into America. Take a look and listen into what he said with regard to this threat.
We'll end the electric vehicle mandate on day one, thereby saving the U.S. auto industry from complete obliteration, which is happening right now, and saving U.S. customers thousands and thousands of dollars per car. And if they don't agree with us, we'll put a tariff of approximately 100 to 200% on each car, and they will be unsellable in the United States. We will not let countries come in, take our jobs, and plunder our nation. They come and do that. They plunder our nation. The way they will sell their product in America is to build it in America. Very simple. Build it in America and only in America. And this very simple formula in Congress has to go along with us, and they will.
Trump would also probably double down on the military posturing in support for Taiwan. This is again very good news for India, since we've always complained that America has not fully understood the threat that we face, Indians face, from China on our land borders. So that, I think, would be a huge plus for India. Now, speaking about Trump in general, as a businessman, Trump is instinctively transactional in his approach. And under his presidency, his first impulse will be to ask every ally, every partner, what is it that they can do for America? What is it that they can get to make America great again? That's the case for Europe, Japan, Australia. I believe India will not fall in that category. For one, India does not have a formal military partnership with America. It also enjoys warm relations with Moscow. It also is the only counter to China, as I said, in Asia, and provides American goods the access that they need, a very large growing market. So Trump would not like to topple that apple cart, and he may have to curb his instincts when he is dealing with India. And I believe that India-US relations, they have a significant momentum now, and they're going to be agnostic to who really comes as the next occupant in Oval Office. But some of India's interests will be impacted under Trump 2.0 as well, like the Chabahar port in Iran, which will be hit by fresh US sanctions come Trump in Oval Office, because he's going to go after Iran, and that is an area that India will have to protect on its own. All right, let's get in now. A prominent voice on the show, Dr. Sampath Shivangi, who was a delegate at the Republican convention in Milwaukee, speaking to us on what does this mean for India. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to me on India Sense.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Dr. Shivangi, I want to ask you this, that Trump spoke at length about several issues, immigration, trade, China, he covered it all. How do you see Trump 2.0, if it happens, from India's point of view?
He was one of the friendliest presidents of U.S. towards India, and he visited India, just before his fourth year of his presidency, and he is very, in a sense, when he meets any Indian or Indian American, he's very fond of them. He shows interest. He likes, he says, his Hinduism, and he's all for India. I think we'll have to wait and see. He hasn't spoken about India in recent months. We'll have to watch and see what he can do. But he is very aggressively against China.
Oh,
Even he
yes.
has placards in the hall that he would work against China. China is America's biggest enemy.
Yes.
So in that one they had balloons in the sky a year ago, and he
Yes.
criticized very strongly against Biden administration not holding America's interest.
Right.
So I think he'll be a tough president. I can tell you that, especially after 4 years of lapse.
Dr.
He's
Shivangi,
going to
yes.
develop. Go ahead, please.
Besides China, what are the other issues that you feel would bring India and US partnership closer in terms of, one is meeting of minds as far as the China threat is concerned, what could be the others?
Yeah, but he's the one, actually, I would say he's the architect of Indo-Pacific treaty he has with India, China, and Japan, South Korea, and the US and India. I think he will definitely, try to work that deal because he likes, I think, as I said, it was his brainchild to have this treaty. I think it will help India, especially I think it will deter China, and not only about trying to come into India, but other neighboring nations, Indonesia, Philippines, all
Okay.
these countries will be watching that.
Right. Dr. Shivangi, I want to ask you about the Indian community there as well. His running mate, J.D. Vance, his wife is a PIO, and you spoke also about the fact that he speaks warmly with regard to the Indian community in the US. How are they looking at Trump's candidature, and what are they expecting out of his presidency if it happens?
No, I think it is the biggest boon. Usha, Gaurie, Vance, if Mr. Vance is elected, because we have another vice presidential candidate or his spouse being in the White House presidential quarters. And I think India last election was not only maybe 25-30% of Indian Americans voted for Republican Party. I think they will change because I see WhatsApp messages every day. People are not very happy about what the administration, even though Biden was very friendly with when Prime Minister Modi ji was in the US.
Indeed.
But I think, I think it's not the only. I was there. I attended lunch with the president, with the vice president, and Modi ji. But somehow Biden administration has not been very friendly, in spite of the best treatment they gave it to him in Modi time, because Kamala Harris was invited to come to India. It's almost 4 years. She has not shown up in India. Yes, so that is one thing. Biden, of course, he went all over the world, but not India, in spite of his interest to.
Indeed, there is an Indian voice on both sides of the ticket. Frankly, there is a Kamala Harris, and there is, of course, Usha Vance. Thank you so much, Dr. Shivangi, for speaking to me. And in fact, on that note, let's also quickly get in a Democrat voice as well. We've got a Republican voice. Let's also get in a Democrat voice. We have Raja Krishnamurthy also joining us and speaking on whether or not, well, who is going to stand up against Donald Trump in the US elections. Sir, let me ask you this, that the clamor around Joe Biden's candidature and the fact that he should make way is just growing. Do you believe that it's time for him to make way for somebody who has better chances against Donald Trump?
I don't know. We'll see what exactly happens. We need our strongest nominee to be opposite Donald Trump. I think that we'll find out in the next couple of weeks exactly what happens. But at this time, we just have to, pull together and make sure that we win the elections.
Indeed. But the narrative here, the perception in India is that Republicans are more pro-India. They also are going to stand up against China in a more stronger way. How do you counter that narrative, given that ties with India are important, and also the fact that the Indian diaspora there is a very sizable chunk of the electorate?
Well, I think that the issue with regard to China is so important, and it needs to be approached in a bipartisan manner. And we need to work with our friends, partners, and allies, people like India, countries like India and others, to make sure that we can kind of circumscribe aggression that the Chinese Communist Party might practice with regard to technology, security, or economic issues as well.
All right, Congressman Krishnamurthy, thanks much for speaking to me. In coming days, we're going to have more of these conversations as the race to Oval Office heats up. On that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back with lots more on the other side. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching India Ascends, the first wide-angle story that we're taking on the show. That is Modi 3.0's first budget that will be unveiled on 23rd of July. And what I am interested in, and what I'm very sure the viewers are interested in knowing, is whether it will get India on the superpower highway or not. The budget comes at a time when the government needs to balance its coalition compulsions. It needs to boost demand. It needs to align India to global supply chains. And it needs to ensure that manufacturing ambitions of India that have been in the pipeline for decades finally take off. And let's get down to those issues. Let's understand what's needed and the India Ascends action plan. The Indian economy grew at a world-beating 8.2% last year, but that is not the pace at which Indians are spending, which means we need to give more money into the hands of Indians. In rural India, Manrega wages have to be increased. That's what the budget action plan of India Ascends says. Increase it by 50%. Increase it from 267 rupees per day to 400 rupees. They will spend on everything in the rural economy, from bikes to cycles to tractors. Everything will go up, including personal consumption. On the urban Indian side, tax slabs need to be relaxed. Likewise, spends have to go up, from cars to ACs to houses. Everything will go up only when people have more money in their hands. India is a consumption economy, but that doesn't mean we don't need to boost our manufacturing sector. We've got some initial successes with the PLI scheme. We've created world-class companies, and by all parameters, those numbers are telling you on your screens. Investments, sales, jobs, exports, on all parameters, the PLI scheme has been a booster shot for manufacturing. Exports have jumped and a lot of investments have come in, but it now needs to extend to the smaller companies, MSMEs. They are the backbone of manufacturing. It doesn't sit on a handful of big corporates. It sits on those MSMEs. And that is where job-intensive sectors like leather, gems and jewelry, handicrafts, garments, all that come into play. And they need to be part of PLI 2.0 for a real game changer to happen as far as manufacturing is concerned. That's the other India Ascends action plan, which is that make PLI scheme 2.0, which extends to MSMEs and get on to some of those job-creating sectors being part of it. In this decade, Indians are set to witness the transformation of the Indian economy into a $7 trillion powerhouse by 2030. We say that, road to $7 trillion. But for that, infra investments are equally important. The government put in 11 lakh crore earlier, and they need to amp it further. Why? Because logistics are very important. Logistic costs in India is still very high. To bring that down, we need to have infrastructure investments. Here's a statistic, viewers, very important. We are still catching up on the semiconductor chain. The first chip factory that will come up at Gauhati, the Tata factory, is going to produce 28 mm of that chip, as against a 2 mm chip that Taiwan is manufacturing. Look at the journey we need to traverse. And that requires a combination of SOPs, focus, and targeted government policy. And that is how you bridge this tech gap that impacts us economically, it impacts us politically. and it needs to be closed. And I'm hoping that the revamped PLI scheme, the focus on better logistics, should be part of a plan to attract big-ticket investments. And Invest India needs to revamp further to attract those large investments like the ones we talked about in those chip factories. This budget should be a step in that direction. That's what the India Sense action plan says. Shifting focus to the other wide-angle story that is coming from China. Xi Jinping's desperate attempts to change his image from an autocrat to a reformist. He wants to be seen to be addressing the concerns of the Chinese economy that is in deep trouble. But instead of providing a stimulus, Xi Jinping's propaganda machinery was on full swing the last couple of days to showcase that the president for life is worthy successor of Deng Xiaoping, the man who shot students at Tiananmen Square but also opened the Chinese economy to be what it is right now. He did so in 1978. Xi Jinping wants to present the picture that he is the next in line after Deng Xiaoping. Now, Chinese politicians met to decide the future course of the economy, military and society. And it was at one such meeting called the Third Plenum that Deng Xiaoping introduced those major reforms, as I said, in 1978 that opened floodgates for China. But Xi Jinping is not Deng Xiaoping. And the reason is his vision has nothing to do with taking the Chinese economy forward. It has nothing to do with making the plight of ordinary Chinese go down. In fact, Xi Jinping's fix for the economy is driven by curbing any possible challenge to his presidency, which, by the way, is for life. He has decided to move the economy away from property, since it is now a cause of social unrest, which could lead to people collectively revolting against the government's policies. 25% of the Chinese economy is tied around real estate. Almost half of the savings of people is stuck in the property market, which is seeing its worst slump in decades. And the sector is going through a crisis. Ordinary Chinese are worse off due to Xi Jinping's policies that focused on property sector for the last 10 years. But despite such acute problems, the sector was mentioned just once in the 4,000-word long communique that came out of the Third Plenum. Instead, the entire focus has been on tech-based sectors to address the economy's deep troubles, or so the Xi Jinping propaganda machinery would want everyone to believe. But the Chinese economy's problems are far from over. They could get worse if Donald Trump and JD Vance win the US elections this year, because what will follow, in all probability, will be a trade war between US and China. The shift from property that Xi Jinping is trying to do is not due to a strategy, but due to the unrest that it can cause. And Chinese politicians, remember, curb anything that can become a rallying point for people. Remember, that's the only thing that Xi Jinping has learned from Deng Xiaoping. Ensure that there are no students on the streets. And without a stimulus, economic pain may grow. Xi Jinping will have no answers. And to deflect that, he is going to create more tensions on the border with India. And Taiwan and military modernization are also part of the communique, areas that I feel will be the centerpiece of Xi Jinping's presidency as the economy falters. Inside Story segment of the show, where we talk about what's happening inside any trend. For decades, there's been a trend that millions flock to the iconic cities of Europe. That's London, Paris, Rome. But guess what? Asia Pacific is where now all tourists are making a beeline. Can India seize this opportunity? What's the trend? Take a look. Move over Italy, France, Spain. Asia Pacific is the new thing in global travel. From Bali's picturesque beaches and cruises in Vietnam to cherry blossoms in Japan. Luxury tourism is booming in Asia. This $271 billion industry in 2023 accounts for a fifth of the global luxury tourism market, with an annual 9% growth rate. With Asia's tourism market thriving globally, Australia has emerged as one of the top choices for luxury tourism in recent surveys, above Japan and China, with most travelers picking their holiday destination to discover a new food or an exclusive traditional experience. By this account, India's diversity and a myriad of traditions and customs makes it an ideal candidate to be the top luxury holiday destination. India's tourism, travel and hospitality industry contributes about $178 billion, nearly 7% to the GDP. But its tourism infra is yet to keep pace with its potential. As per WEF, India ranks 39th behind Japan, China, South Korea in the Travel and Tourism Development Index. Tourism alone has the potential to reach $125 billion by 2027, up from the present $75 billion. By 2029, the sector may account for 53 million jobs. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. India is yet to fully tap the luxury travel market. Higher investment in tourism infrastructure will establish its position as a global tourism hub. India packs the breathtaking holiday destinations from the Himalayas in the north to the Sundarbans in the east to the stunning beaches of the Lakshadweep Islands and backwaters in the south. All it needs is a revamped tourism policy. 22 years of incredible India needs to now make for a new tourism policy that promotes world-class tourism infra and world-class marketing. Incredible India was launched in 2002 to showcase the many facets of India, but it's run its course. India attracted 2.3 million tourists in 2002, which increased to just 9.2 million in 2023. In contrast, China attracts now 162 million tourists in 2019. Clearly, the scope for tourism is sky high, and Incredible India hasn't kept pace with it. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Sense. Thanks so much for watching.